once again thank you to all of the attendees who have joined. We thank you for your continued participation. Um, all of our participants are here. I think we're waiting on one more Reverend Honor to hop on, and he's trying to hop on now. But so thankful to everyone who has joined. We have had a blessed morning this morning. We opened up strong with prayer, having some amazing Black clergy women to pray. Elder Timbila Covington, Reverend Pia Jessups, Reverend Donna Van Hook, Reverend Sakina Hamblin prayed it down for us, released the power of God on this seminar. And so we are just so blessed that you all could be here with us today. Remember, we have some resources for you. As you register, you will receive a faith-based organizing book. You will also receive a t-shirt, Black Power and Black Faith t-shirt. And so you want to get on and register now. Registration is open. And I also ask is that you run over right now to our Facebook page, NC Black Alliance, and you begin to share our broadcast, begin to share it far and wide right now as we are speaking. Run over and do that right now. We want to make sure that there may be some faith leader who didn't get the opportunity to hop on, but they can still get the opportunity to engage. Registration is still open. It's been open from now until the very end. So don't try to register at 5. You won't get your t-shirt at 5. You need to register. You need to register now. I guess we'll cut off registration at 5 o'clock. How about that? So please get registered. You know some Black faith leaders who need this information. Black faith leaders, as we've stated throughout this seminar, in many cases are the first point of contact within our community. Still, no matter how much people try to say that the Black church is losing some relevancy, Black faith leaders are still the first point of contact, and we still need to be equipped with the information necessary so that we can best serve our community politically and locally. I'm so excited because we have some faith leaders represented here this morning who are doing some great work locally. We have Reverend Marcus Fairley, who is a part of our faith-based engagement team, hailing from Rowan County, Salisbury, North Carolina. So excited about that. So excited about Reverend Dr. Chris Stackhouse, a faith leader in Cumberland County, Fayetteville, North Carolina. I've known this brother to be very modest, so I know he's not going to share this, but his leadership was thought of so high in his community that the family requested that he do the eulogy for our dear brother and ancestor, George Floyd, when they brought his body back to Rayford, North Carolina. So we are so appreciative of this brother's work. And then we have a national leader, and I'm going to allow them to expound on all of their work. We have a national leader here, a Reverend Billy Honor, a mentor of mine who does some great work, who's now a national leader, who's done state level faith-based organizing as well, and he can expound on that, who's also done some organizing on the ground. So we are just so thankful and blessed to have him here with us as well. And so I'm going to open up the floor to each of you to give a brief introduction of who you are, tell us about your work, and then we're going to jump into the questions. Reverend Fairley, I'll let you start off with your first question to the participants, and then I will follow suit, and we'll just go back and forth for about 30 to 35 minutes, see where we are, see if we're wearing the attendees out. If not, we'll go a little bit, but then we'll close out in question and answer session as well with the attendees to make sure that we are adhering to a level of engagement that works best for those who are viewing, who are calling in, and who are also watching us on Facebook. So thank you all once again. Reverend Fairley, you have the floor.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for attending today's seminar. It's been a great thing since early this morning. My name is Reverend Marcus Fairley. I'm pastor of St. Luke Missionary Baptist Church. I'm also the second vice moderator of the Rowan Baptist Association. A little bit about myself. I work with the North Carolina NAACP alongside. I also am on the faith engagement team with the NC Black Alliance. And I'm just grateful to do this work on the ground with voter education and making sure that we equip our citizens to know what it is that they need to know about all the levels of engagement that needs to be taking place when it's time to vote. And so I'll stop there and I'll just popcorn it over to Dr. Stackhouse to give a little bit about himself.
Well, good to be in this panel with you brothers. My name is Christopher Devon Stackhouse. I pastor Lewis Chapter Missionary Baptist Church. We have several locations, and my work in the community involves me being the chair of Organized Against Racism, Cumberland County. We try to engage in meaningful communication with those who are like-minded and particularly those who are not like-minded. We try to be advocates for those who are victims of the system of racism. We try to look at the things that are affecting our communities and speak truth to power. And that's a good enough introduction.
Hello, everyone. I'll jump in here. My name is Billy Michael Honor. As the good Reverend CJ said, the way I prefer to categorize myself is probably, if I can borrow a biblical phrase, as the chief of all sinners is probably the most accurate depiction of who I am. But, over the course of time, I started out as a young preacher. And I often tell people I'm a young preacher that turned into an early middle-aged organizer and public scholar. And so I spent the first 20 years of my young adult life from 15 on up to ministry, leading congregations and doing work connecting theological education to the work of congregational ministry, and then got involved in the work of organizing in the last several years, having to do with how it is we build power in our communities and develop civic understandings around theological engagement, et cetera, and work with groups called like the New Georgia Project here that was started by Stacey Abrams, helping to build a progressive infrastructure around the state to move the vote and to get people politically engaged. I ran that statewide mobilization efforts for several years, doing national work around building anti-racism platforms around multi-faith coalition building. And so really just happy to be here, most of all, though, with the wonderful work that's happening in North Carolina, and looking forward to the conversation.
Love you, brothers. You brothers are so modest. And I'm just so blessed and thankful that you all are here. A few months ago, I was in conversation with the Reverend Dr. Stackhouse, and he was asking us about the work. He said, well, Doc, we don't need another voter registration group. We got plenty of those. And I said, although we work alongside and do some of that work, we don't see our work as being transactional like that. And this is why we are trying to emphasize voter education. We believe that that is pertinent to the work. It does no good to register a bunch of folks and they don't know what it is or who it is that they are going to vote for. And so we try to work to do the work in tandem to make sure that people are conscious and are abreast to the issues from a state level as well as a local level. We know that a lot of people are not just abreast on what is happening locally. They don't know about what's going on around police accountability. They don't know about municipal contracting. Their municipal entities contract so many dollars with Black businesses in the community. And many times, the level in which they do that, that is a disparity. Here in Greensboro, for instance, we do 98% of our contracting with white businesses and almost less than 1% with Black businesses. That's $5.3 million in one community. That's over 200 million in one community annually. And I'm sure that is the case statewide. I'm sure that is even the case nationally that is happening. Folks are not aware about eviction moratoriums that are going to be up tomorrow here in North Carolina, or not aware about HB 805, which is an anti-protesting bill here in North Carolina that has been brought up by the General Assembly through the representative chambers, and is also trying to make its way through the Senate. And as our dear brother Weaver shared earlier, folks are not abreast to House Bill 722, which is a redistricting bill. All of these draconian and oppressive bills right here in North Carolina that our people need to be aware of, that our faith leaders need to be aware of, so that we can build coalition within our community and infrastructure within the Black community to combat these things that are going to disproportionately affect us in a detrimental way. So I want to ground us in that and then lead us into the very first question. For Dr. Stackhouse or Reverend Honor, whoever it is wants to answer first. And the first question is, most people who live in local communities are unaware of the political issues in their local communities. Are you able to identify a few issues that are pertinent to Black people in your local community?
I guess I'll open the conversation here. Well, one of the things that's happening here locally in Fayetteville, North Carolina, is there is a push to expand the number of seats on city council. It is very interesting, the timing of this push to expand the seats of city council. Those seats of city council have remained at 9 for decades and decades. So I know you're like, well, why is it a conversation about expanding it now? It's because 7 of the 9 city council are African American. And so there's been conversation now about how this does not reflect the citizenship of Fayetteville, because it's 7 African Americans and only 2 Caucasians. And this is their first term being comprised of this ethnic makeup. And needless to say that there are some in this city that have taken issue with it. So and now they're not saying that's the reason, but anybody that's paid attention, okay, can see that the only reason that this has come up is because African Americans, Blacks, we showed up and we voted for representation, and we got that representation. So now the other side is saying, well, we need to add more seats to it. So the thing is, if they add more at-large seats, then it also makes those local seats more expensive to run, because you don't just have to run for your area, you have to run across Fayetteville. And so rather than just campaign and get your signs for your particular district or your particular area, you now have to have enough money and capital to campaign across Fayetteville at large, which will eliminate some of our politicians aren't lifelong politicians. You know, some of our politicians are lifelong politicians. It's all that they do. But we have one of the members of my church who's a mother who got into politics for the first time. It eliminates that kind of politician who says, listen, I see that my community needs to be represented. I may not have much money, but I have a passion to help the people who live in my community. It will be detrimental to those people, but it will help the rich people that just want it for power and for clout.
And I'll add, speak a little bit about our context here. And I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, by the way. The issues, obviously, like any other metropolitan area, are myriad. There are so many I can name. The 2 that I'll just highlight that are taking up a lot of the public discourse and consideration right now have obviously having to do with voter protection. You may hear the phrase voter suppression that comes a lot out of our state because of the I like the word you used earlier, CJ, draconian. Definitely extremely severe, unnecessary voting laws that have been passed in our state that have garnered national attention. And as I've been saying everywhere, the real reason for that is that we have one particular political party that, rather than compete for the share of the new demographic votes that are in our state as people move here, they would rather change the rules or cheat. It's really that simple. It's really nothing else to talk about around these bills. They don't make sense any other way. We didn't have much documented cases, almost none, of any voter fraud, as is true over most of the country. But yet we got these bills that were pretty much solutions in search of a problem. And so there's lots of energy around how it is we undo the possible really consequences, voter consequences as a result of these bills. And so there's a lot of work being done around that. The second one is crime reduction hysteria, or shall I say the misguided public policies that come forth whenever there is a rise in crime. There's a rise in crime all over this country in a lot of our urban areas as a result of everything that happened with COVID. There's psychological data we don't have time to get into that explains why we've had a rise in crime after having been in quarantine and dealt with the expansive trauma that we have. Well, in response to that, in our neck of the woods, so to speak, we have politicians who are running for office for mayor of Atlanta and other politicians on state level who are offering all these ideas about how to reduce crime. Most of them are bad because they have to do with the expansion of incarceration, the expansion of criminalization of poor people, et cetera. And many activists on the ground are trying to push back and say that we need to have a deeper conversation. As I say all the time, I really, really dislike when elections become centered around crime reduction because it flattens the discourse and it disenables us from being able to talk about the deeper issues of how it is that we found ourselves in a lot of these problems in our communities that have to do with inequities and inequality. But those are the two that are most on the top right now.
Thank you, brothers. Those, now that you have identified some of the issues that we are faced with locally, there's a famous saying that all politics starts local. Why is it important for the faith-based leaders to be engaged in the local political process?
I'm happy to jump back in here on this. And I think, well, there are a number of reasons. I mean, one of which is this. You can't lead people, or shall I say, you shouldn't lead people who don't love the people. And I don't believe that you can love people if you aren't concerned about their material conditions. And the material conditions of people are highly predicated upon the goods and services rendered to them by their government, by our governments on all levels, right? And so even though it would be sometimes desirable, maybe even preferable, to just have an apolitical posture as a faith leader and just say, I'm just going to grow my congregation and mind my business. I'm just going to teach the people of God. That sounds good, maybe even noble, but it falls short of what we've been called to do by loving our neighbor as ourselves and being able to, as John 4 said, beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone that loveth is born of God and knoweth God. They that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. Well, how can you love a God who you've never seen if you hate your brother and sister who you see every day? These are scriptures. Let me root them in some civic realities. How can you love someone if you aren't concerned about them having access to quality water, having access to the food that they need in order to be able to be nourished and live and prosper? So because so many of the material realities of our people are predicated upon politics, which is the art of how it is we do life together, faith leaders have to be involved. Faith leaders need to be involved because it's part of the way in which we care. We show care, soul care for those who've been given and entrusted to our leadership.
Very well put. And continue to frame this within the constructs of our conversation, Black power, Black faith. I think the reason the Black church is struggling with its relevancy is because we have become so spiritually minded that that some of our pulpits have become no earthly good. So we can be. It's one thing to make sure that our Sunday morning experiences, and I say Sunday morning because that is when we particularly will engage the bulk of our people, that our Sunday morning experiences are heavenly and inspirational and all those other wonderful things. And then when our congregation leaves from that worship service, be it digital or be it in person, we have no more dealings with them. We must care for what happens to the people of our congregation and community outside of sanctuary and worship settings. So, and if we frame it even more of Black faith and Black power, this has become even more difficult because we are fighting against white supremacy. And if we don't acknowledge that we are fighting against the system of white supremacy, it makes it easier for that system to continue to thrive and change voter laws. So if voter laws are being changed, and we are the church, we are Black faith and Black power, but we bury our heads in the proverbial ministry saying that who's going to speak? Politicians have to answer to their base. Politicians have to answer to what will get them more votes. The church and the pastors are supposed to only answer to God. Therefore, our messages don't have to be tailored to will it get me more votes, or will I lose a percentage point with this particular demographic? Because none of that matters. We are supposed to be the voice crying out in the wilderness, but we become so afraid because white supremacy has established a very good system. Because when at the turn of the Civil War and coming out of the Civil War under Reconstruction, most of the politicians coming out of the South, most of the Black politicians coming out of the South were preachers. Now, you don't see that in the abundance, but I would love to see more preachers and pastors engage in this political discourse, because we are not supposed to be swayed by anything other than what God has called us to do, to take care of the community that He's placed us in.
My brothers, this is heavy. This is heavy. I mean, so blessed to have you all to be able to set the context, to have both of you give an analysis of the political happenings in your own areas. I mean, I think it's really telling that in Fayetteville, North Carolina, there is a fear of, and I'm sure that although you may have 7 Black representatives, they're not all together, but there's still a fear of that power shifting and shaping that city, that folks are trying to get in front of it before it can even really sink its teeth into the political landscape. And then we talking about Atlanta. I mean, Reverend Honor, you're providing an analysis for what we have to look forward to the political landscape in a chocolate city. There's a notion or idea that politically in chocolate cities that, that Black folk are just thriving. And you were talking about that, how even there is so much happening to try to restrict that power, and to even restrict that power locally amongst our youth around public policy narratives and agendas that will restrict our young folk. And I'm just thinking that this is really powerful. I don't want to keep expounding on it, but I want to move on to our next question. But I just want to thank you all again for setting this context. Question number 3. Talk to us about your organizing as a Black faith leader locally, and what activities you have been involved in on the ground in your quest to fight for justice. I'll start with Reverend Dr. Stackhouse.
In the middle of our city, in the wonderful city of Fayetteville, North Carolina, lies the Slave Market House. dead center of the city. There's a roundabout, so you have to go around the city. So if you ever come to Fayetteville, you'll hear about it. You hear about the slave market house. They've tried to rebrand it. They've tried to put it in a different image, but everybody in the city knows what it is. They know exactly what it is. So we've tried our best to organize to remove the slave market house from the center of our city. It's a long story about where we are with that, but it is an uphill battle, as you can imagine. That with that being in the center of our city, built in 1832, that it is a lot of people that are trying to keep it in place, and some of them look like us, and most of them that look like us are about 55 and up. So that's part of what I have discovered, that when you're pushing for change, generational gaps begin to impede in that process as well. Matter of fact, I would love to hear how in your respective endeavors, how if that is played out in your communities as well. We also are fighting that they want to build a Civil War and Reconstruction museum in Fayetteville, like down the street from where the slave market house is. So this is what our city has told us. We cannot move where slaves were sold, but we can build a place to honor those that would rather die than let slaves be free. That's the dynamic of my city. That is the dynamic of my city. I'm gonna say that again, because I'm a preacher and I'm used to say it twice. They've told us we cannot move a place where slaves were sold, but we can build a brand new place to honor those that would rather die than let slaves be free. That's the context of what I'm dealing with here in Fayetteville and trying to organize against.
Yeah, thank you, Pastor. Really interesting story, and I'd love to hear more about that work and the history of it. I think here in Georgia, what we've been doing over the last several years is working primarily around 3 issue items. One is voting rights for Black and Brown folks, voter expansion. Secondly, has to do with criminal legal reform in various different measures related to it. And third has to do with how it is we redirect and restructure local budgets, local municipal budgets and state budgets, redirect those funds to more community related projects. So you could think of it as budget restructuring, criminal legal reform, and voting rights and voter protections. I'll say something quickly about each of those specifically so that people get an idea of what we mean. So voter protection, what we've organized is a coalition all over the state made up of mosques, synagogues, and temples, because I do believe in multi-faith organizing. We have rabbis, imams, pastors, bishops, apostles. We got them all who are part of our coalition who work to not just, I appreciated the comments about voter registration. I do believe voter registration is, I think civic engagement is like a house. Voter registration is the door to get in. But then once you get people in the door, then what? And so we teach these faith leaders how it is that they can mobilize people first around voter registration, then around how you do voter education. But then after voter education, it's voter mobilization, because it doesn't do any good to have gym membership to know about how all the machines at the gym work if you don't go. And so part of this is voter mobilization, how we get people to go vote. And then after we get them to vote, unfortunately, we live in a country where we have to then turn around and we have to protect their vote. So then we enter into voter protection because we know just because you cast a vote doesn't mean it'll be counted, unfortunately. And so we work in those 4 ways and helping faith leaders to do those things. We've had successes with campaigns over the last years around that. Then we criminal legal reform, stopping money bail so that people don't get caught in the system because they can't afford to bail out, particularly for lesser crimes. We've had success with that as well. We want to close jails that don't need to be open. We've had some success with that as well as getting people who are currently incarcerated the ability to be able to vote and participate in the civic process. And then thirdly, our efforts around budgets has to do with we attack the whole idea that third-party retailers on the internet. I'm sure this is probably true in North Carolina. It was true here in Georgia. So if you're Walmart or if you're Target or anything, you have a third party. Most of what's sold on those sites is not sold by those stores. It's sold by third-party retailers who sell on their sites and pay no taxes. So you can buy a Rolex watch online. It's going to be cheaper than if you buy it in the store. Why? Because there's no sales tax. Well, the problem with that, you say, well, I'm getting a good deal. But the problem with that is that robs communities that really need them. And most of our communities really need the sales tax money because it helps to fund fire stations, schools, etc. So we closed that loophole. We advocated our organization first on the ground to advocate for closing the loophole. We did it. And now here in Georgia, there's almost $700 million more that come into communities as a result of closing that loophole and now organizing. So that's what we mean by restructuring budgets. That's some of the work.
And you guys have done some amazing work, and I'm sure there's much more that you can share about the work that you all have continued to do. One of the things I do want to commend you, Dr. Stackhouse, on the fight about doing that work there in Fayetteville. I will say in Rowan County, there was the statue, Confederate statue Fame, that was there well over 100 years, and we were relentless in making sure that it was moved from the center of downtown, and it was eventually moved and has been put in a cemetery, which is the place where it should have belonged in the first place, but it was recently moved there a few weeks ago. But this is some work that we did. It was 20 years in the making as far as the push to have it removed. And some of the same things that you said you were facing in Fayetteville were some of the same things we were faced with in Rowan County, with the generational gaps of the understanding of why it was imperative for it to be moved. And people were pushing to say that there was other issues that were more pressing or more apparent. But if we can move a statue or an object, then we can get the momentum to move our community even further with the voice of Black power. And Reverend Honor, you were mentioning some things, in fact, which takes us into our last question, is why is it important for us as a Black community, Black organizations, and even Black faith leaders to prioritize voter education?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one to start at least. Well, first of all, I mean, let's just be honest about it. It's really hard to be informed as a voter. The system is not set up actually to have voters be informed. And it's really a simple reason why. And that is because as our political system is structured, the work of informing the public about what a candidate thinks usually falls on the campaigns. The problem with that is obvious. And that is that the campaigns cannot be trusted arbiters of information about their candidate or the other candidate for the obvious reasons. And so going to their website, seeing what they believe is not actually, or what they say they're for, their platform, all of that is not the best form of voter education, right? So that's part of the problem. So what we have to do is we need more organizations that hire researchers, that get volunteers from congregations, some of these retired folks who have time to dig in the crates on these candidates and put together briefs and community docs on folks that can be shared, that give people good candidate education. But voter education extends beyond just about candidate information. That's important. The other part is just how to vote. What's going to happen when you go, changes around voting. So one of the things that we do here is we have a group that's called a Peanut Gallery, organized through the New Georgia Project, which is how we monitor boards of elections. In other words, we have volunteers that are at every board of election meeting. Now, in Georgia, we have 59. We have 159 counties. The only state that has more is Texas. We got way too many counties. There's some racist reasons for that, but each of those counties is their own little voter registration fiefdom. And so we have to send people to monitor what's happening, because a lot of times our organizing is reactionary because we are not a part of the meetings and we don't know what the decision-making process is, how it was determined, et cetera. And so the other way that we do voter education, I recommend to people, is to send people to those meetings just to take minutes. They ain't got to say nothing. Take minutes and report that out in a public venue so that people are able to keep track of the decisions being made around voting, because voter education isn't only about the candidates on the ballot, it's about how people actually participate in democracy as well.
I love that, going to the meetings and taking notes and sending them out, because you're right. Many of our conversations are reactionary and not proactive. I'll frame it in these three ways. I think that we need to, as pastors and as leaders of church communities, we need to stop selling access to our communities in our congregations so cheaply. The senator, whoever, congressperson, whoever wants to come, mayor, whoever wants to come and talk to our congregations that have not really done anything for our community, we need to stop being so happy that they coming to talk, because they're just coming to get a vote. And most of us know we will not see them again until the next election cycle. And if you want to come to our congregations, we need to start specifying, first of all, if you come talk to our congregations, you need to come tell us what you've already done for our communities. And you need to tell us what you plan to continue to do for our communities. I do not understand why there is this hesitation or fear or whatever it is to ask politicians, what are you going to do specifically for the Black community? There should be no hesitation to ask that, because they can't win the vote without it. So we're hesitant to ask what you'll do for our community, but at the same time, you can't win the vote without our community. It's only right and it's only fair that if you need our vote, you also need to do something for the community that puts you in office. We see this happen too often. We send funds. We send funds to Georgia. We send funds to North Carolina. We send funds to these places to get politicians elected. And then the second thing happens: they move the goalposts. They say, okay, well, we needed to get these people in office, but we got those people in office, but it's still not enough. The next election is coming up, and we're going to really be able to do something. We're going to really be able to do something for your community. We really love your community. We can't do it without your community. But now we need you to elect these people in. If you elect those people in, then we can do something for your community. So we do everything we can, fundraising and getting people out, and we get as many of those people in. They're like, oh, you know what? We just thank you, but now this next election is coming in. I know you helped us with that, but if you could just give us a few more votes and a few more people, like, we want to help your community. We want to do something for it, but we need more people. We need more politicians who are on our side. Meanwhile, we keep voting, we keep sending money, we keep voting, we keep sending money, and they keep moving the goalposts, keep moving the goalposts, keep moving the goalposts. We, the Black community, saved Joe Biden's campaign, period. Anybody paying attention knows this. Saved his campaign. And when he got in office and signed those, 37 executive orders, where was the community that saved him? He told, wait, hold on, wait, just give me time. You didn't need time for those other communities that weren't even responsible for voting you in. And if this was Donald Trump, we would have been blasting Donald Trump for some of the things that have not happened all over social media. But we've kind of taken the backseat because this was our guy. And now we need just a little bit more. We gave him the presidency, we gave him Senate, we gave him Congress, and we still waiting, because now they're like, well, we just need a few more. We need a few more votes. You have the majority in everything. And still you're telling the Black community, give us more time. Keep moving the goalposts. And this is what they'll do every election cycle. They don't earn our vote. They scare us into the vote. Earn it. Tell us what you've done for our community. Tell us what you will do for our community. I'm thankful for what you're going to do for the immigrant community. That's wonderful. I'm thankful for what you're going to do for the LGBTQ community. That's wonderful. But what about the community that voted you in? Why are we always last? Why are we always on the back burner? And then once again, when it comes election time, they'll want to scare us. Don't let this other party, don't let these other people win, rather than saying, vote for us because we earn your vote.
Listen, that is great. Real quick, because we got some stuff working here. We got a generational thing that we can expound on and maybe talk about how we've addressed it in our communities, but we also have what you just raised, the last piece. But I do want to open up the chat line for questions. So I'll be monitoring that. If there are some questions, if you have questions that you want to raise, please do so at this time. And in fact, I see a question. It says the budget for all elections are outlined in the budget. Reviewing this will give an idea as to what and how things will happen. More important, the preliminary review will define your voting strategy as to what to ask for. If that wasn't a question, I think that was somebody adding more brevity to the conversation. Reverend Honor, did you want to say something?
Yeah. While questions are ruminating and coming, I wanted to follow up something Pastor Stackhouse is saying, because I think what he is highlighting is something that we have to wrap our minds around in terms of we have to quit trying to organize to get so-called right candidates in office so that they can reform or make better an obviously tired and broken system. We're going to continue to do that work because we want to be participatory in our democracy, but there's a greater work, I think. And the greater work, if we're going to talk about Black power building and Black faith, is that we need to understand, we need to organize for new communal and political realities, right? That are much more effective and beyond what we currently have. This work of trying to reform this current system, how many times do we have to be proven correct that it's broken? And we keep sending people there who think can fix it, but the sum is greater than its parts in this case. And it doesn't matter. I mean, we sent two U.S. senators from Georgia, right? Both of whom I know and who are friends of mine. I love them dearly, but I knew before they went, they're going to be one vote. That's it. They got one vote, right? Along with everybody else. You see, it has not yet had the impact that we were hoping that it would have by having a U.S. Senate in Democratic hands. And that's because I think we have to think beyond simply trying to get people to participate in this system and begin to think about what it means to create different ways of governance, different ways of being. It may even be time to think about different ways of how it is we collectively organize ourselves politically and where we place our allegiance. We have to start pushing people. We got to use our theological imagination to imagine new ways of doing things, because these same old ways ain't working. That's one of the things we can do to organize people.
Reverend Honor, I think that is some groundbreaking work, and I think that you just added much brevity. I think you're right. I also think that is the way also to assuage some of the generational gaps within our community. The reality is that a lot of our folks experience some real trauma. And I don't know if we hold that at times. We get upset at slow progress. And because of that trauma, made some allegiances and some alliances within the community and are comfortable in some ways. And I think the way to get around that is newer generations doing these new things that you suggest and gaining trust in the community and out organizing and bringing our elders along. it is very Eurocentric to create a dichotomy between the community, us versus them. We know in African context, we are somehow called to hold it all. And so I'm seeing all of you in your respective places and a lot of leaders within our generation doing some new things. I think we have to continue to support each other, put some infrastructure around it, bring new people to the work. And then if our elders want to come along, they'll be able to come along and they'll have something to come to. That's just one of my suggestions.
As we continue to, build community in the context of Black power and Black faith, we have to understand that it is, I just saw somebody put in there that it's a divide and conquer tactic. And the more you can divide community, the more you can conquer. Because it would appear that it doesn't matter who is in office, the approach to our community is similar. So what I would love to see a day in my lifetime where a presidential candidate is asked, because this happened in either the second, I can't remember, it was either the first or second presidential debate. Basically, what are you going to do for the Black community? Their answers immediately went to criminal reform. Now, just let that sink in for a minute. What are you going to do for the Black community? Well, let me tell you what I'm going to do for criminals. I'm not a criminal. I understand that the industrial criminal complex has been built to victimize people of color. But every time a politician starts to talk about what he's going to do or what she's going to do for the Black community, there's an instant conversation about crime, as if crime and Blackness are synonymous. What about what you're going to do for small business owners? We own businesses too. Matter of fact, one of the reasons why we can't own more businesses is because of the politics behind it. What about that? And so, I'm glad to see, and I believe that in this new infrastructure bill that's being pushed, because Biden does have some good Black voices around him, I believe that is being included in the infrastructure bill. But I would love a time when a conversation about Black community does not revolve around crime.
Totally agree. This is so rich. Our time is winding down, and I'm sure folks don't want to end this conversation. Are there any other questions? We have some questions. Hold on. Cheryl Tung has a question. Would you agree that the powerful position of the Senate majority is the crux of the problem with the inability for legislation to be brought to the floor for debate? This seems to be the reason why nothing gets done for Black communities. We have one person who prevents the discussion. Should we focus efforts in Kentucky?
Yeah. So the procedural rules are the problem, right? That's what you're referencing, the filibuster. There's a mass movement to end the filibuster so that you get a simple majority, 51, and that's it, or in the case 50, and then the vice president would break the vote. But there's a broader issue. It's that, but the reason why they won't do that, the reason why to this point, the president Biden has not supported it, and many others have not supported doing that, is simple. And that is that Washington has a system in place whereby most of those people who have worked together for many years still believe in the fallacy of bipartisanism, right? And in a gone era that no longer exists, where we had this working across the aisles, and the president is infatuated with returning back to the time where, and this is part of him having spent most of his adult life in the Senate, to when you did have some run across the aisles and people were more reasonable. We don't live in that type of system anymore. And it ought to be evident in the last really 16 years, right? That it has not worked. It has not worked in that way. You cannot find reasonable people on the other side of the aisle. And so the question becomes, are you going to sit around and wait on what you know based on the evidence is not going to happen based on what we've seen? Or are you just going to go ahead and do what needs to be done so we can give the people the things that they need and pass the legislation that the people voted for? Sure, it's a risk because Democrats won't always be in office. And that's what's really making people on the Democratic side who are politicians afraid. They know that it could be likely that in 2 years, the Republicans take over things, that as happens in American history, American public votes the other way. And then the Republicans are in charge. And then they say, hey, look, you got rid of the filibuster, and they start passing all of their stuff, right, with a simple majority. And so that's what they're afraid of. But what we have to say is we have to stand for the moment that we're in. We got to fight for people in the moment that we have. And then we have to allow for people to see the benefits of the work that has been done and believe that they'll vote for it and fight that fight on another day. But we got to do what we can do today with the power that we have.
But I want to reiterate what you said earlier, because all of that, what you just said, was eloquent. Mm-hmm. We have to be honest about the system in which we're in. Mm-hmm. It's no need to get mad about who is in the office of the presidency. You need to learn, what does the presidency do? And many people are unaware of that. But we live in an empire, and that has a whole realm and a reality as well. And when we think about that, we understand that the system is not developed in such a way that it's really supposed to work in our favor. That's just the reality. And that's why we have to do what you suggested. You can look at Kentucky and all of that, but if we don't start doing things locally and figuring out how to build new communal models and infrastructure to address some of these problems locally in our community, it's 7 Black folk and 2 white folk on council that won't pass legislation in the city so that Black folk can get contracts. And so we have to look at that. It's some Black folks or a Democratic majority in North Carolina that are passing public policy around public safety that is detrimental to Black communities. So it's going back to what you said, Reverend Honor. We have to do something new in our communities, think locally, and begin to build infrastructure locally to change things in a transformative way that it works its way back up to the top.
Yeah, and let me, Pastor, you want to jump in here real quick?
Go ahead.
The challenge is, CJ, is that we have to condition ourselves to be able to do both at the same time, right? And that's really with resources that are limited, right? In a lot of our organizations, I think that's a challenge, because we definitely want to do the generative work, but we also can't give aid to tyranny by just retreating and allowing for those who are in office to operate without accountability. We have to constantly hold them accountable and tell them what they should be doing, what we want them to do, and how the system could work better while we work to build a new system. We got to do both things.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Any other questions? This is the first session that's gone the whole time today, so I'm excited. I'm happy. Any more questions?
Let me just say this. Black folks, stop pledging your allegiance to a political party. Stop pledging your allegiance to the Republicans or to the Democrats. They know this. They know that all they have to do is placate and put a D beside their name and get our vote. And once again, not do anything for our community. Just like you said, we have people that are either Democrats or people that look like us, that when it comes time to stand for us, don't stand for us. They passed an anti-Asian hate bill in a month. The Emmett Till no lynching bill has been debated for what, 50 years or something like that? That's unacceptable. But they're going to come back to us and they're going to say, hey, listen, and I promise you, they'll say the same thing every time, every election cycle. Doesn't matter who's up, doesn't matter what's happening. They say the same thing because they want to scare you into your vote, not earn your vote. This is what they're going to say. This is the most important election of our lifetime. You can't afford to not vote for us, even if we haven't earned your vote. You can't afford to not vote for somebody that already is not voting in your favor. Now, when you give us our vote, we're going to go back and we're going to keep doing what we're doing, and we're not going to vote for the things that are most important to your community, but let's keep scaring you into a vote, not earning a vote. That is absolutely pathetic. That they passed a bill in a month, but have not passed a bill for our community in decades. But they're going to come to our churches, y'all. They're going to come to our churches. They're going to come to our communities, and they're going to say, vote for us again. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to be so glad to see them and so scared of the other side that we're going to vote for them, and they'll go right back to not doing anything for us because we have not demanded it out. You either do something for our community or you lose your election. And then maybe the next person that comes along will actually do something for our community.
Reverend Stackhouse, such brevity that you've added to the conversation. Thank you once again. Reverend Anna, such brevity that you've added to this conversation. We have a minute left. I'm going to allow you two to give us some closing remarks. But to our attendees, as I've stated before, please share. Please tell folks that they have time to register. We have an exciting session coming up around Black faith leaders engaging the environmental issue with some esteemed colleagues, L.A., Lamisha Whittington-Kaminsky, as well as Reverend Deli. And so we have that coming up and want you all to be engaged. Please join in for that. Please share throughout your Facebook right now as we speak. Please get ready for lunch. I'm gonna have to go in here and heat up some oxtails myself. Dr. Stackhouse, would you close us out with your closing remarks, as well as Reverend Anna?
Preachers, pastors, clergy, you are called to do more than preach. If you love your congregation and the people that God has charged to your responsibility in your community, you are charged to do more than just talk about what is going to happen to them post-life. We also have to make this community and the world that they live in as best as we possibly can. Stop waiting for an apostolic movement and start an early movement to help them right now.
Thank you for that, Pastor. Good to be here with you. Good to be with you, CJ, and all of those who joined us. Thank you for the good work that y'all doing in North Carolina. I say to every faith, every person of faith, make the liberation of our people the very center and guiding decision of everything that we do. Don't vote for anybody who doesn't support the liberation of our people. Don't support a platform. Do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you all soon. God bless you.